listening to Bold Calling, an award-winning podcast presented by Orum, where every episode we're bringing on the biggest and brightest minds in the tech and sales industries for a discussion about their biggest challenges and the unique ways they're working to solve them. I'm extremely excited today because my guest is Colin Specter, the SVP of Revenue here at Orum. Colin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely, Adam. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Obviously, love Bold Calling, love Orum. So looking forward to getting into it and sharing some insights with the audience.
Yeah, so we are going to be talking about sales enablement today. And this is, honestly, this was a little bit selfish of me getting to bring you on to do this because as the content person here at Orum, obviously you head up our revenue team. For me, this is almost like making sure that I'm doing the things I need to do, then benefiting all of our listeners by doing that. So because of this, creating all the content that I do, I always have, as a marketer, I always have this fear that it's just going out into the ether and no one's using it, no one's seeing it, which is where sales enablement comes in. So I want to kind of dive right in and ask you, as a leader from the sales side of things, the first thing I want to ask you is just like, when marketing is creating all of this stuff, we, in our minds, we're the center of the universe as marketers. We think our campaigns are incredible and everyone's going to just, their mind's going to be blown by this new video we roll out or this new t-shirt, and then we can send it to salespeople. And in many cases, not here at Orum, but in many cases, salespeople just roll their eyes and they're like, okay, great, thanks so much. So the first thing I want to ask is, when marketing people are creating things that we do want to provide for sales reps to actually use, what would you say like the formats and structures should be that we should be providing that content so that it's actually usable? And this could be like email snippets or one pagers. Like, what are the actual structures that a sales leader and then a sales team would use when this content is created?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think a couple of thoughts there. One is meeting the reps where they already are is super helpful for adoption, right? And so if we're talking about just logistically, like where the content should live, I think, what I've seen, and I'm not saying this happens at Orum, but what I've seen just in general in my time is, marketing might have some sort of content hub or some sort of other system that they love to live out of. And if the frontline sellers or field team are not used to going into that system, or they don't really go into that system for any other reason, it's not something that they're going to often check for like content updates and things like that. So ideally, marketing and sales can be on the same like intranet, and it's already a place that like both people live, whether it's like in specific Slack channels or Notion or specific shared drives, and there's a mutual understanding and shared understanding of like the language of where things are when they are described, and the kind of organization structure of those things, versus like learning an entirely new like content system versus like, your sales enablement system, might be different. And so I think as long as like sales enablement and marketing, product marketing are on the same page in terms of the kind of learning framework, then it becomes easier to get the right adoption and kind of meet people where they are, just more structurally there.
Yeah, I love that. And for larger, like very well established companies, they very well may have a tool like RevSpot and HighSpot, where it is a sales enablement tool where like marketers can put stuff into a specific tool, and it says for all of the sellers, like, this is the part of the buyer's journey, you're going to need to use this, and here's exactly what to say. But for companies of various sizes and ours as well, like, you guys don't have that specific like access. So is it really just as simple as saying like you said, like, we're all living in Notion, let's just keep everything in there, like it? Or is there a better way for marketers to like develop a cadence and saying like, here is what's going on and we need to tell you this every single month? Like, is it just as simple as saying like, you guys live in Notion, we need to live in Notion too?
I would say like the best way to get adoption is, versus trying to get the whole group to adopt at once, find a pilot rep or two with a new asset or new talk track or new demo flow or new description of features, whatever it might be, and like it helps, like reps love reducing uncertainty because reps get stuck in their ways, especially if they're doing, well. They like have like a flow down. They have certain assets they like to use. They're more resistant to change with like a new sales deck, right? And like, you often like have reps roll their eyes when there's like a new marketing deck like every year, right? Especially like folks finally get dialed into a certain flow, certain deck, certain types of assets. But I think showing examples of success and what good looks like with the new asset can definitely help with adoption. Yeah. So I don't think it's not just as simple as like, yeah, we all use Google Drive. And, I think more just that's like, let's reduce as many controllable hurdles as possible. And then, to spark adoption, like tap the rep that folks, respect their opinion and their use of different decks and tools and so forth. So that would be my advice there.
Speaking of creating champions and finding, like you said, like pilot reps to adopt these pieces of content, I want to ask you, and this is kind of connected to our experience here at Orum. When I first started a little over 2 years ago now, like we had a content debt. There wasn't really a content person. And so I remember when I first started, I came to you, I came to our other sales leaders, I came to our CS team, and I said, what do you need? Like, what exactly do you need? And I started creating, whether it was like our calling culture guide or a decision criteria checklist, anything you guys needed. I was like, absolutely, tell me specifically what you want. And now we've gotten to a point 2 years later where we have a lot of content, and some might say create too much at times. There's almost, you can't do something with all of this. And like, what I want to ask you is like, is there a certain point that you would say as a sales leader, when you guys come to marketing, like, is there a process that you think about when it's like, hey, this enterprise rep needs one specific piece from product marketing, or they need a single sales one pager, but it's really only going to be used in this one situation? Like, how can marketing and sales create an understanding where sometimes someone has to say no because, insert rep here is asking me for a piece of content that's going to take me a week to create, but in order to create that piece of content, I can't create something that the whole team is going to create. So how do you, I guess the long-winded question is like, how can marketing and sales create a relationship where salespeople can ask for things and understand they're not always going to get what they want? Like, how do you create that relationship between the two teams where there's an understanding of we're going to do what's best for the whole, sometimes at the detriment of like a single rep?
Yeah. So I think it's less about the rep and more about the impact, the business impact, which you already nailed, right? So I would say it's the same exact thing with like feature requests, right? It could be a marketing asset or a feature request, very similar. Like, what are the actual dollar impact? What's the dollar impact of building a feature? Like, let's say we have a big enterprise whale of a customer. It's going to be $1 million deal, and they need a certain custom workflow built, right? Like, okay, that's worth dedicating an engineer towards building and delivering to land that 7-figure contract, right? The 7-figure account and customer, versus, yeah, like if it's, I don't know, a 20K, 30K account, and it's a custom thing for them, some sort of custom integration for them, probably not like, unless we have evidence and data that there are multiple customers that will benefit and how much that is. Like, yeah, you got to make informed business decisions. Like, you can't go and kind of react to every rep. From the sales rep perspective, the most important request is like the one in front of them, the customer, like they're working with like in that moment. And so like for them, it's like, this is the world, and if you're an SMB rep and a mid-market rep, like a $20,000, account, a $50,000 account, like, you're like, how can you not be prioritizing this? This is my quota. This is like such a big thing. And so, yeah, taking a business lens perspective, right? It does come down to your most valuable customers, like who is giving you the most dollars is going to get the most attention and most kind of care in terms of features and marketing assets, right? That's just the reality of business, right? And so that mindset of like marketing can't say yes, product can't say yes to every single request, but will weigh the impact. For example, an enterprise customer asked us for a workflow diagram. I want to call yesterday. Like, I was like, oh, we like a workflow diagram specifically with Salesforce, which we have a great Salesforce integration. And I didn't easily find, an asset like this that like showed the like fields and kind of a flow chart between Salesforce and Orum specifically. And I'm like, well, we service, I don't know, 1,000+ Salesforce customers, I think at this point. Like, it probably would be something that I will likely come up more often and is probably worth prioritizing to like deliver that type of asset, right? But if it's, let's say, a flow chart with, bullhorn or a long tail kind of CRM that's more niche or an industry we don't like focus on specifically, we focus more on Salesforce, HubSpot, CRMs, then we have to weigh like, okay, maybe the rep needs to go build that on their own, and modify like one of our other assets. So that's just a train of thought, right? Business impact. I would look at the revenue dollars, the number of customers it impacts and can help, whether it's a feature or marketing asset.
Yeah, I love that. And for me, I'm a people pleaser. I'm a like problem solver. I get this from my mom. I constantly want to like make sure I'm keeping everybody happy. And a lot of times, even when like you said, like one of our mid-market or like SMB reps asks me for something, I'll go to like another team before I say no and be like, would this be beneficial for you as well? Because to your point, like if there's an enterprise company asking us for a very specific thing, it may seem very specific in the moment, but like if it's an enterprise company to land a big deal, whatever they're asking for is probably going to be beneficial down the line for another enterprise deal. So it does make sense to do those things. But yeah, I have still, my boss Ting Ting routinely is telling me like, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to other things with, passively. So just try to remember that. And it's really wonderful to hear that, from a sales leader saying like, yeah, we just boil it down to ROI a lot of times. And that's a good way to approach it. Yeah. I want to ask you, do you in your mind have like a cadence of how frequently we should be connecting as sales and marketing teams on sales enablement? Like, is it once a quarter, once a month? What do you think would be a good cadence for marketing to come to sales and say like, hey, here's what's new. Let's implement this into your process?
It's a good question. It probably comes up maybe more structurally during the QBR, right? When we get the sales asks, right? Every quarter we get a summary of, what does the team need, right? And that's where typically we'll find patterns of certain asset requests, right? That maybe we're missing, or more, feature enablement or sales sheets on certain features that we haven't yet developed. But yeah, I mean, stuff always comes up ad hoc, of course, over those 3-month periods. Yeah, I think like maybe more formally once a quarter we audit and take inventory. And then of course, in between that time, there's going to be we should always leave some capacity to handle, the more impromptu kind of ad hoc requests that come up as certain deals come up and we recognize patterns of things we're missing, right? Like, we just did a big like global launch. Like sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you run into it and people are like, well, can you give me like a guide for these like new European countries we support, right? Like what, like how does the language modeling work there and all of that, right? So like we sometimes like, oh, like you're right, we probably should build that. Like we didn't, but you can't like think exhaustively, the first kind of release of things. So action brings information, right? So as we're taking action in the marketplace, we're going to get feedback and information about what we need. And so I think like, yeah, just let's put a bow on it. Let's do a quarterly, more formal sit down of like, what do we need to build and what we should prioritize, but then keep capacity with one another to prioritize things as they come up in more of a maybe 2-week sprint, basis, like what product. I feel like if marketing and product kind of mirror, one another in terms of like research and development, we'll be in a good spot.
Yeah, well, and especially like the unsung hero of that is like product marketers. You've got great product marketers here, and if it's not on that same sprint, what's inevitably going to happen is product is going to tell us about a really cool new feature, and of course the first question from salespeople are going to be A, when is this available, and then B, how can I tell this to the world? So yeah, if product marketing isn't on the same page with product on like when the releases are getting rolled out, they're gonna have egg on their face when the sellers are like, okay, do we have one-sheeters? Do we have a video about this? Do we have snippets? Like what can I use? So I absolutely love, yeah, I love that so much. And like, we don't want to be, as marketers, we don't want to be learning about product releases in real time with the salespeople, because then we're like, oh no, we're in trouble here.
like a demo flow, and even better if we have like an actual like product video, we can go like celebrate, like shout out on LinkedIn about, and like show like what it like. We've got live transfer coming out, right? By the way, and I'm sure by the time this episode releases, it'll be live, right? And so now I'm like thinking, okay, we need to get some assets around this. Like, what's like a great workflow we want to pitch, and everything around this new feature.
I will say something I do as a marketing person. My job is a little bit easier here at Orum because we are selling a sales tool, so I can go to our sellers and it like basically say, okay, you're the person being pitched Orum. What questions do you have? And then we can create content around that. But like if your ICP is finance or DevOps, like go to those people and say, we have this thing coming out. What questions would you have, so that you can kind of like, to your point, like when we have a thing that comes out, like you said, our international expansion, now it's, 160 plus territories, like there's going to be questions we don't think about. If someone's going to say, hey, I have a prospect in, I don't know, Manila or wherever, like we're not going to be able to be exhaustive with that. So it's always good to just ask, what is your ICP internally for those types of questions?
Ideally you have, and if you don't already, you should form a customer advisory board, right? And so with your ICP, right? We drink our own champagne, so we can use we are our own internal customer, but that's not always the case with many companies. So you can either talk to your internal persona, like the person that works at your business, or even better, you should form a customer advisory board with your ideal customers, your top customers, and let them be that first kind of feedback soundboard, give them some equity, and have them feel really a part of the journey.
How can sales leaders develop accountability with the sellers? Like, again, I have a wonderful relationship with our sales team, but like, we're recording this at the very end of January. In fact, you're being very gracious with your time a week before the end of our fiscal year. But, and so I know if I release any content and I put it in Slack and Notion, all the places, like it's going to fall on deaf ears this particular week. And that's just the nature of business. But how can, there's only so many times I can be like Orum's big hype man and talk about how great this content is before people are like, all right, Adam, we get it. How can sales leaders develop accountability for their sellers to ensure that they are using all of the assets that are available to them?
Look, I think repetition is the mother of learning, and the job of the sales leader is communication and over communicate. And you need to communicate to a point where folks are tired of hearing, like you want them rolling their eyes, like, oh, here you go. Here's Colin again, like saying I gotta use this talk track, or here's Colin again saying I got to use the first call deck, and I need to use this customer slide, and so I want to be annoying with my people, and as a leader, you have to be. And look, we're a remote company; we don't get to put posters up around the office like with the objective and the mission statement. So we have to repeat it over and over and over again whenever we're in a sales floor or a Zoom call or what have you on Slack, right? So we have to be intentionally over communicative, especially because we're remote, but it goes, even within office. So
I love that. And like for us, like you said, it's being over communicative is so important because we have, Orum as a virtual sales floor, and like we as marketers jump on there. I listen to our SDRs all the time, like ripping cold calls and like understanding what our ICP sounds like. But that, that is one thing where like you can hear other people talk a certain way and be like, oh, I'm going to try that. But the unseen things is the LinkedIn messages that they're sending or the emails that they're using and the different cadences and like that stuff. To your point, it is something I've gotten good at, is like over communicating to the point where I'm just like, yeah, someone's probably going to roll their eyes at the things that I'm saying, but it'll help a few people. And if it helps a few, it's a kind of like a groundswell.
Believe me, you want to over communicate than under communicate. And then all of a sudden scratch your head. Wait, how come they said that? Or how come they didn't know the answer to this? And how come they didn't know we had that? Right. So over communication, always err on over communication for sure.
Yeah. I got two more questions for you. One, do you have a thought, and I'm trying to put on this ahead of time, so I apologize, but do you have a personal like preferred best practice for how sellers can make requests from a sales enablement standpoint? Like, would it be a Google Doc? Or I guess it's like, what way would you prefer? Like, do you think would be the most efficient way for people that are listening in and just trying to set up sales enablement?
I think we're getting a good habit using the new Slack workflows feature, right? And I'm like, we do it in a RevOps channel. We're doing it in a product feedback channel. I think if we don't have it already, we should add a kind of marketing asset workflow Just because, again, like kind of meeting people where they are and the structures that they're already used to like engaging with. I think that's kind of stay consistent, right? Between the most common teams that are most, often getting requests. I think if we teach one system, let's try and speak that same language and it make it easier for folks to know, hey, I know I'm going to go submit a request workflow for this asset, right? I think we just set it up for swag as an example, which is great. So yeah, we do it for swag, we do it for features, we do it for RevOps changes. Let's also do it for marketing assets where it makes sense.
Yeah, if you're a person listening in and you guys use Slack and you're not using the Slack workflows, they are awesome. I am obsessed with like not only just being able to request specific things like you said for swag, like it's wonderful to see the reasoning too, because a lot of times someone will just like go into one like a Slack channel and be like, do we have this thing? I would like it. But like with the workflows, you have to put like, what is this for? What is the business purpose? Yeah.
Well, to the point we made before, you can even ask like, what's the ARR potential that this asset will help, or like what customer profile is this asset for? Or, oh, it's for all customers in Salesforce, or oh, it's this one mega deal that is like a very niche thing I need built for security, right, or whatever it is.
Okay, how can people listening in ensure that it's also a two-way street, that like, yes, sales is getting everything they need from marketing, but then, our biggest thing as marketers is always when we're rolling out these campaigns or reports, how can we make sure that it's a two-way street so that sales are, using their networks to properly amplify marketing messaging as well?
I think that's a great question. And I've been wanting to do more of this. I think it happens naturally, but because, we set the example, we lead from the front as a leader. So if your people see you out amplifying the marketing message and on LinkedIn and Twitter, and they see you amplifying, then people will follow and see, okay, that's what good looks like. That's the prototype. But also, I think putting more intention behind it and train people and really like invigorate and empower people to go and do their own amplification is also important, because not everybody naturally rises up to the occasion. Like, all right, well, Colin's posting and Adam's posting, I should go start posting. Some people do, and some people do it better than others. So I think, yeah, doing a like specific training and enablement on what good looks like and how to ideate and start to what channels should you be posting, what type of content should you, and how should you structure posts and all of that. I mean, it's a great reminder. Like I've been wanting to do a training internally and like reinvigorate that motion for us. So
I will say, I will leave us with there's a quote from Remember the Titans. It's attitude reflects leadership. And I will say, like, I'm not just saying this because you're on with me. Colin is such an advocate for all the content and marketing channels that we have and all the different campaigns. And like, if anyone is on LinkedIn and knows Orum, they also know who you are because you are such a big champion for that. So I wanted to have you on and talk about sales enablement because I know it's something you believe in and the marketing and sales relationship. So one last question before I let you go. If people are just like starting the sales enablement journey, what's like the first thing you would do? What is like the first thing that could kind of get people on the path? Like if they take one thing away from this conversation, what's the first thing they should do?
I mean, if you're just getting into it, you should do the listening tour, talk with the top people, the top leaders. And is there a pattern in what people need? And that's a great place to start, right? Triage there. Focus on, after that, like the next level is let's look, like you want to make impact to certain metrics. And so try to identify the behavioral metrics that you want to impact. So a behavioral metric might be, like the metric is a result of certain behaviors, right? So when I say behavioral metric, that's what I mean. Like connect rate would be the behavior of making calls to the right people. Connect to meeting rate would be the behavior of, am I good at talking and booking a meeting? Is my message relevant to that person once I get them on the phone? My win rate is the behavior of how I run deals and how many I close versus the ones I speak with. So identify the behavioral metrics that need the most help, that have big variance between people. And if there's someone that's way better than the group, deconstructing what they're doing different, and put the blueprint of what they're doing differently to share with the others, and is another great place to start. So I'd say after do the listening tour, focus and triage with what people need immediately, and then be proactive in identifying behavioral metrics that you can impact next.
That's a perfect starting point. Colin, you have been very gracious at the end of our fiscal. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Adam, thank you. What you said about amplifying the Orum voice and everything is right back at you. I'm so thankful for our partnership here, and look forward to continuing to amplify and make it all happen.